Hey folks, today we're covering Tinto Talks 41 for Project Caesar, aka EU5, and this week Johan's going to be talking to us about how parliaments are going to work in the game. As he mentions right at the start of this, these were obviously in EU4, they were something that you could unlock as you progress through the game, but they're going to work very differently in EU5, as we've seen with most features, to be honest, that have come over from EU4. They've been reworked, changed, made better for the most part, and that is the same case here. But as always, we're just going to get straight into the actual content itself. So he does also add here that this time they're also going to add a bunch of more flavorful things to the parliaments. So they aren't just the same wherever you play. So many countries will have unique names for their parliament, such as courts in Aragon and a Reichstag in Sweden. Probably butchered how that's said, but there we go. And you can see already in this first screenshot, this is how the parliament screen is going to look, at least for now. You can see if it's in session, where it is located, the base support that's happening there, and then the debate that is happening. So currently they are debating increasing the ties to subjects. Now these are a bunch of things you can try and enact that he's going to talk about later on, so we won't cover it too much here. You can also see here parliament requests again. It says 50% for all of them. This is just placeholder at the moment. And then the parliament agendas, things that they're roughly working towards, and really just giving you an overview of the parliament. And as mentioned earlier, these are going to work differently to EU4, and the first thing he's going to talk about here are the types of parliament. So currently there are 5 types of parliament, although technically you could argue that no parliament is a type as well. I mean, that is technically true. If you don't have one, it is a type of one. I would kind of agree with him there. They are based on different types of gatherings that different societies had, which means that different countries will start with a different type of parliament that you will be able to change during the progression of the game. So don't think of this as like the UK Parliament or the Canadian Parliament or something like that. It is more that group of lawmakers in whatever format that takes in your country. So you can see the first one here is Assembly, available to all countries. Nobles and peasants have agendas, but they are very weak. They don't really have that much power. Council requires codified laws advance, and nobles and clergy can set agendas, but they also have a weak impact in your realm. And you can see here in this screenshot, this is the council. Has the parliament system? Yes. Clergy and parliament? Yes. Agenda impact on nobility and clergy, minus 10% for both of them. Could be useful depending on what you're trying to do. The next one is a state parliament, requires feudalism. Nobles, clergy, and burghers can all have agendas under this version. The next one is autocratic parliament, requires the age of absolutism. Nobles, clergy, and burghers can all have agendas. Crown power is 25% stronger, can force through an issue if they want in parliament for a small cost. So again, this is a difference to the previous ones. And then we've got constitutional parliament, requires the age of absolutism, again, like the one above. Noble, clergy, and burghers can all set agendas, and their impact is much higher. The nobles estate can improve estate satisfaction. So this is the constitutional monarchy that, as we know, a lot of countries move to, especially through the time frame of Europa Universalis and later on into history as well. Johan does finish off here by saying, if you wish to let your peasants have a say in parliament, you can grant them that privilege, but don't say he didn't warn you about doing that. So yes, you can give them more power. I guess if you've got a large peasantry, I guess, you can give them some power in parliament. That'll make them like you, I guess, but he is saying, I guess they have so much control maybe at that point, they can force through some things that you really don't want them to do. Next, of course, if you have a parliament, you have to call that parliament, and that is what he's going to talk about next. If you're able to hold any type of parliament, you can call them as long as it's been at least 5 years since the last parliament was called. If you do not call one for decades, the estate will get less and less satisfied for each passing month. So yes, you can just kind of ignore this and try, you know, maybe like a King Charles once did. Try and ignore them as much as you can, but ultimately they're going to get more and more annoyed with you. You're probably going to get rebellions, maybe civil wars, all that kind of stuff happening. When you call a parliament, you'll get the choice of where parliament should be held. You can always hold the parliament in your capital, which will give a small boost to centralization, but you also have the option to pick another location. That is pretty cool. Usually you can pick any town or city, but there are countries that can hold a parliament in a rural location as well, which again is cool and bringing some flavor to the system. If you pick a place that is not your capital, your country will become slightly more decentralized, but that location will gain a nice bonus during the duration of the parliament, which lasts about half a year. So some nice bonuses you can get, and you can see here what they are. So the parliament location, monthly prosperity, 1%, monthly development, monthly control, and local proximity source. So all of these pretty nice bonuses if you wanted to give it to a certain place and bring your parliament there for a limited time. Once you've called the parliament, you also need to pick an issue that they're going to debate during that session. You can pick up to 2 options per estate to choose from, where the parliament support you gain depends on their current power in the country. So this is again where you're playing like that macro game, where I want to pass this law, so I've got to kind of make that faction in my government that little bit stronger so there's more chance they'll support it, and then we can push through that reform and things like that. So you can see a bunch of them on the screen now: bolster government, establish new hunting grounds, expand officer lists, fund farming estates, promote member of the burghers. You can see obviously a lot of these are linked to a certain estate. Well, pretty much all of them are, in fact. And then that'll help you, as you can see here, with the support you might get. You can see expand officer lists plus 44%. That one will probably pass if you do try pick it. The next thing you'll also encounter are parliament issues. The issue picked has a modifier that is applied to the country while the debate is ongoing. In many cases, this is rather beneficial, but it only lasts for the duration of the parliament. They currently have over 70 different parliament issues and about a dozen country-specific ones as well. So already, even just with this system, you can see the amount of flavour we're getting even at the launch of the game. It's looking great so far. If you fail to get enough support in Parliament, there will be a drawback, however, which is usually a hit on stability. But if you get over 50% backing in Parliament, the country will also gain some benefits depending on the issue. So, you can lose out of this, be successful with it, and there are plus and minuses depending on which one it is. So this one is promote castle works. While the issue is being debated, monthly progress to defensive 0.5, so feeding into your societal values there. Castle costs half as much, stockade costs half as much. That's pretty crazy. I guess you have only got the 6 months to do it, and again, this might be balanced before release, but in that 6 months, I guess you could spam out some castles and really gain some benefits from doing this. If the debate passes, you will gain fortification works for 10 years. I guess that maybe makes them better, or again gives you a slightly smaller reduction in cost, not the 50%. If it fails, you will lose 7 stability. So yeah, you got to decide whether this is worth it or not. The next one he's going to show off is conduct a census. While this is being debated, population growth is 0.5% better. If it passes, you gain 7 stability. If it fails, you will lose 7 stability again. These will probably be balanced before launch. And then as we saw in that first screenshot, there is parliamentary support. We've seen this in some other screenshots as well, but he's going to actually discuss what this is now. So what is parliamentary support? You'll always have a base support in Parliament from your current crown power, which normally would be rather low unless you've completely crippled your estates. And then you have the potential support you can get from picking an issue. There are also some government reforms or advances that increases your base support, which I think was in last week's Dev Diary. Maybe it was the one before where one of them showed off an increase that would happen. So how do you increase your support during a parliament? Well, first you can have parliamentary agendas. You can always see the agendas that the estates want to push during a parliament. And if you grant them what they want, your parliamentary support will increase. The amount that parliament support increases is based on the estate's power that they have, similar to what they were talking about earlier, multiplied by their current satisfaction. So again, as I was saying before, if you keep them happy, you've got more chance to pass things that they also want to pass themselves. I think that kind of makes sense anyway. This makes it beneficial to keep estates happier than minimal levels if you wish to rely on them in your parliament. These agendas can include law changes, changes to societal values, privileges granted and more. If you accept the agenda of an estate, the next agenda they propose in this session will give far less parliamentary support. So I guess to stop you just spamming through a bunch of things from the same estate. The first one they're going to show off here is nobility's autonomy support. We will lose 2.5 stability, but this will change the societal value swing by +2 towards decentralization. So I guess if you were trying to decentralize your realm or something, you could use this. The next thing he's going to cover is parliament requests. You can also use the parliamentary support immediately during a session and get a request fulfilled, but that will reduce your support by 50%. So you're really not going to want to be doing this unless you're desperately trying to pass something. So you can request additional taxes. This allows you to collect more taxes from your estates during the next 3 years, which, if you're desperate for some money, sounds like a good option. Ask for larger levies. This will give you a 25% increase in levies at any point during the next 3 years. Again, if you're thinking to go to war, you could push this through. Ask for law changes. This will allow you to change laws at a much reduced cost during the next 3 years. So again, if you're trying to change your laws, do a quick change around for some reason, you would try and push this through. Prepare for war. This will give you an insulated casus belli on a country of your choice within diplomatic range. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Very different to the other ones, which are just reductions or increase of certain things in your realm. This actually gives you a certain casus belli as well towards any country within your diplomatic range. Of course, with any of these will require you to probably have to pick an issue backed by the powerful estate and probably accept an agenda or two. So you are doing that like jockeying, like I'll give you this, then you're going to boost my support, and then I can use that support to push through one of these. Kind of how parliaments are supposed to work. We can argue in the comments if that does actually ever happen, but that is the like rough idea of it. I give you this, you give me that. Okay, we're going to then go use that on something else. And that's really how the parliamentary game is played, especially in EU5 by the looks of it. Obviously, if you have a parliament though, what do you have? Yes, you have parliamentary seats. We have two more things influencing parliaments that might be of interest. These are two special buildings that can be created and are counted as parliamentary seats, which gives an extra significance to that location. One is an urban parliamentary seat that the burghers can ask for during a parliament, which grants a significant permanent power to the burghers in a town or city. That's not something you're going to want to give away if you can. The other is a rotten borough, which the noble estates will build in a rural location, increasing their power if they are not currently happy. If you look it up, rotten boroughs, these were basically locations in England that like 5 people lived in, and pretty much the noble just controlled that parliamentary seat, and they could never get voted out of it. If you've ever seen the TV series Blackadder from the UK, there's a classic episode about rotten boroughs. It's very good if you do go watch it. And then the last thing Johan's going to say here is again about flavour. He's saying do go onto the forums and submit your requests for flavour names. He says he currently has 35 different parliamentary names for around the world. So if you can think of any, if in your country it's called something different, and you don't think they're going to include it, do go on the forums. As I always say, give some feedback. Go in there and say, Johan, in my country, the parliament was called this during EU5's timeline. And then it looks like he's going to put it in the game if you can confirm that. So that is pretty cool as always. They're trying to get that feedback before the game is released. We've already got a bunch, as he said at the beginning, but a lot more coming as well. And then with that, that is the end of the Dev Diary this week. Johan's saying next week he's going to talk about disasters. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about disasters. It's going to be fascinating to see how they work in this game. As we've seen with so many systems improving on EU4, are we going to get disasters that are event chains? Are we going to see disasters on the map maybe? Maybe we'll see like interruption on the map, what it affects and things like that. Obviously, it's going to affect population, growing, things like that, but will it affect combat? I'm sure it will do. We'll see though in the future. But with that, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here. I'm covering EU5 through all the Dev Diaries to launch and then beyond. And I also cover Crusader Kings 3 in a very similar way. So if you have enjoyed this, subscribe and you can see all that in the future. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.